Garden Warfare is a game known mostly for its variants, as they add most of the game's replayability. There's over 100 of them, ranging from usual stat swaps, less damage for elemental damage, sniper variants, splash damage variants, full auto variants, burst damage variants, armored variants, and the list goes on and on. Of course, not all of these variants are exactly equal. Some are better in certain situations and worse in others, while some are just better than default counterparts with some weakness. People love to compare and contrast these variants to see which one of them are better. Unfortunately for them, the game's official wiki is a bit lacking in actual data, to say the least. Most people tend to judge characters on their damage numbers and their own success with them alone, so that's what this video and following series will be for. I've gone through and tested out the damage, rate of fire, DPS, and time to kill of a bunch of these characters, and this video will be going over Foot Soldier and his variants. If you want to skip to any specific part of the video, I've left timestamps in the description for you to jump to whatever part you're the most interested in, as well as a link to all the data I'll be showing in the video. Also, just a bit of fair warning, prepare yourself for a lot of numbers. I mean a lot of numbers. Starting us off, we got some basic statistics you could pretty much observe yourself in-game. Stuff like damage numbers, ammo, reload, and total damage. There's not much to go over here, but I'll point out a few interesting points. First off, General Supremo can actually fire 60 shots without overheating, 76 with the overheat upgrade. He also has the longest reload at almost 4 whole seconds of cooldown if he happens to overheat. The fastest reload is of course Super Commando with barely less than half a second. In fact, he's still the fastest without his upgrades, which makes sense considering how the Z3 crossbow works. Tank Commander pretty obviously takes the top spot for the highest single shot damage, dealing 65 at close range. Arctic Trooper takes the bottom spot, dealing 4 damage on the body shot at long range. In terms of total damage in one clip, General Supremo takes the top spot with 532 damage possible before overheating, surprising pretty much no one. Also surprising no one is that Tank Commander pretty obviously takes the bottom spot for total damage, with once again only dealing 65 damage in his one whole shot. Now we got the boring stat stuff out of the way, let's move on to rate of fire. You can calculate a character's rate of fire by dividing their clip size by the amount of time it takes for them to fire their whole clip. That'll give you the rounds per second, but we want to get the more often used rounds per minute, or RPM. By simply multiplying the rounds per minute by 60, you get the character's rounds per minute. Looking at the calculations, it's pretty easy to see some very noticeable outliers, that being the burst damage variants. Super Commando is ridiculously high, and Tank Commander doesn't even have one. This is because rate of fire doesn't take reload into account, and considering Super and Tank spend most of their time reloading, that's an obvious problem. This is pretty easy to fix though. All you have to do is replace the time to end a clip with the time it takes to fire for a few bursts, and replace the clip size with the total shots fired in that allotted time. This leaves Super and Tank with a realistic rate of fire. Now let's go over all the soldiers'
rate of fire.
In terms of the highest rate of fire, we have General Supremo coming in at a monstrous 938.5 rounds per minute. This guy's RPM is almost as high as how many hours I have in this game, and it honestly isn't surprising. Despite having double the rounds, this guy still only takes 1 extra second before he overheats, which is honestly just impressive. Honestly, this guy puts Peak Gatling to shame with just how much of a bullet hose he is. I guess it's pretty understandable the minigun variant would have the highest rate of fire. I mean, this guy even beats out the rate of fire with Super Commando's individual bursts. It's pretty crazy. The slowest rate of fire is quite obviously Tank Commander at 47.2 rounds per minute, with Scuba coming in second at 141.3 rounds per minute. Now that we got all the stats out of the way, we can finally look at the damage per second, or DPS. Just like rate of fire, DPS is calculated with just a bit of simple math. The equation is in the name, as it's, a ratio. You divide the total damage and divide it by the time it takes to empty a full clip. In terms of which characters have the highest DPS, there's actually 2 that make it top spots for various ranges. That being Super Commando and General Supremo. Yeah, I doubt anyone was expecting Supremo to beat Super Commando, but unless I've gone completely nuts, Supremo actually takes most of the top spots, having the best DPS at long, medium long, and close range, with Super taking the spot for a medium close range. In fact, let's talk about close range. At maximum ramp-up, Supremo does 109.5 damage per second. Or in other words, this man can almost kill a Sunflower in only 1 second. If you want another comparison, Rapid Fire, the BFM upgrade that no one would shut up about needing a nerf, had a maximum DPS of only 100, and Supremo passes it by an extra 9.5. Of course, there's still the fact that DPS doesn't give the perfect representation for comparing damage, especially when burst fire variants are involved. Heck, Super Commando only has a maximum DPS of 99.51, which doesn't exactly seem right considering how fast the man can send plants back to spawn at times. I mean, come on, Park Ranger and Sky Trooper have a higher DPS than this man, you gotta give him the benefit of the doubt. But moving on from those two now, we've got Default Foot Soldier as our basic average, having a DPS of 96.54 and dealing constant good damage at all ranges. Archer Trooper's DPS is pretty pitiful in comparison, with 67.15 at close range, but of course he's got his Freeze Gimp to more than make up for it. Tank and Scuba fall under the same situation as Super, both of them having pretty pitiful damage in comparison to the automatic variants, but that's just a given based on how burst damage works. Sky Trooper and Park Ranger both have the same strengths and weaknesses, with both of them beating up Foot Soldier in close range, but falling off at long range, with Park Ranger benefiting a bit more at close than Sky Trooper, but suffering more at long due to his high damage fall-off. It's also important to note that I did calculate his gas damage with his DPS, as it's basically just adding damage to each shot. I also did the same thing with Centurion's fire damage, but by adding the fire damage's DPS to his guns. Camel Ranger suffers at close range in comparison to Foot Soldier, but being a sniper variant, he of course makes up for it by having more damage at long and medium range. Centurion is just kind of bad. Like, really, he's the worst at every range, not counting Tank and Scuba. Of course, he's got fire damage, but we'll see how that helps in the next and final section, Time to Kill. Time to Kill is another relatively easy stat to calculate. You divide the total health of an enemy in question by the DPS of the character in question. For instance, it takes Foot Soldier 0.879 seconds to vanquish a Vampire Flower, because 85 divided by 96.34 is 0.879. However, like, literally everything else I've calculated, there's a bit more of complication to it. If the health of the enemy in question exceeds the total possible damage of the character in question, then you have to add the reload time and do another calculation, and it just gets more complicated from there when you add in the existence of burst fire variants, and basically, it was a lot of math. Too much math, in fact, but I still did it, and here's the chart. The gray health pools at the end are the effective health of any characters with the abilities to give them resistance, that being Vamp Flower and Sunbeam, Sunflower and Sunbeam, Pea Shooter and Pea Gatling, Rock Beam, Pea Gatling, Metal Petal and Sunbeam, and Torchwood and Leaf Shield. In that order. I only did the time to kill of each character at close range, because if I did it with all 4 rangers I measured, I would have gone insane. But it's here, so let's go over it. Foot Soldier once again acts as our basic average, and anything else is labeled as faster, slower, or too close to the side. Super Commando does better in some health pools, and worse in others, doing better the lower the health is, with the exception of Leaf Shield Torchwood, of which he takes the top spot for. He also takes the top spot for 125 and 129. But 125 is specifically important because not only is it home to Foot Soldier's most common matchup, Pea Shooter, but is also the only health pool with 2 whole class types in it, being most of the Pea Shooters as well as most Cacti. Archer Trooper gets the short end of the stick, going under in every health pool, but his freeze with the upgrade does activate after 1.355 seconds of getting shot, so he's still going to freeze anyone with 100 health and up, but he'll still suffer the freeze before Foot Soldier can deal up to 135 damage, making him much better against tankier characters, but worse against characters with less health. Tank Commander really suffers in this context. He's ridden all but 2 health pools, those being 125 and 129, and really doesn't compare to Super Commando in terms of damage output. Camel Ranger obviously falls behind Foot Soldier, due to this being the close range time to kill, but he does have a higher DPS and would perform better at long to medium range. Sky Trooper is pretty much a complete improvement from Foot Soldier in terms of time to kill, but his lower ammo is pretty clearly shown off as he goes into the red against Torchwood and Leaf Shield Torchwood. Centurion just had it bad. He has the worst time to kill in all situations. Of course I didn't want to completely screw over the Centurion mains, so I made this little robot under him. Basically, it's his time to kill, but a character is determined as dead whenever they reach 25 health, or when the fire damage would finish them off anyway. Surprisingly, this helped him out quite a lot. In fact, he isn't at the bottom in every single health pool. Except, of course, 175, 215, 250, 275, 189, 227, 240, and 550. And if you don't count Archer Trooper, you can add 100, 110, and 125. Yeah, Centurion is kinda lacking in the time to kill department. No, but really, just play Camel Ranger. He's literally faster even when I did the fire damage thing. Park Ranger actually surprised me quite a lot. He's in the green across the board, and he's got a great DPS to boot as well. If you combine that with his gas clouds being able to hit multiple people, you've got quite the powerhouse. really, just about everything this guy has is in the green. Except his damage numbers. God damn it! Why? No, really, his damage numbers are red. In fact, most people don't even know that, apparently, which is kind of freaky when you think about it. It's like some kind of Mandela effect. No, but really, like, I'm legitimately surprised. Why are they red? They've always been green. Like, come on, I'm not crazy here! Scuba Soldier's in kind of a weird spot. He averages out against Vampire Flower, but he takes his top spot against 100 and 110, meaning this guy can actually melt through Sunflowers and Roses. His main drawback is the fact that he hits red for every other health pool, so he kind of suffers against anyone that requires him to reload. That said, his splash is still good, and his stoner gimmick is still something that can help out in certain situations. Now, if you've been paying attention, you probably just realized I left out a very important certain variant in here. Yeah, General Supremo is kind of insane when it comes to just raw, straight-up damage. He has the highest time to kill in the majority of health pools, by a very large margin, in fact. In fact, the only time when he's not in the green is against Leaf Shield Torchwood. No, but really, this guy is freaking insane in how much damage he pumps up. If you just compare him raw damage-wise in comparison to Super Commando, he's just like the objectively best foot soldier. In fact, in comparing him to literally any other foot soldier, he's the objectively best one in terms of just damage. Of course, he has that whole lack of mobility thing, and he can't bunny hop and all that stuff, but seriously, like, this guy is criminally underrated. Like, just look at this. Look at all the numbers. Those are some good numbers. Alright, that took a hot minute. It kind of turned into a variant comparison at the end there, but I have a feeling that's what most people will do with this info anyway. I'll be doing Peacer next, so make sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to get notified of that. I'll also be posting all of these videos on the Garden Warfare Reddit, so they'll be on there as well. I'm probably going to try to get this stuff on the PvZ Wiki when I finish the series, just so anyone can easily find it without having to stumble across this video. Anyway, I've got more math to do, so I'll see you in the next one.